It's time to raise the roof for our latest spring training episode. Welcome back, everyone, to the pod. I'm your host, Alex Murphy. Hopefully, my co-host Gibby will be coming on in just a sec, but we have a very special guest today who I will introduce right now. He is currently the Rays and has been the Rays beat writer for MLB.com for quite a few years now. How many years are we going on at this point, Adam?
Since 2021 was when I came back. So
So
is this
5 years.
season, yeah, season six, I guess, right? Crazy. Time
Yeah, I
flies.
guess. I don't know. I'm not good at numbers. I didn't go to college for numbers and stuff like that. But Adam Barry has joined us on the pod once again. First off, Adam, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you as always. And how you been? It's been a bit.
Yeah, doing pretty well. Spring training is a month old with still 2 weeks to go. So spring training is long as usual, but it's nice to feel like you're back into kind of meaningful baseball. I think the WBC has been fun in that regard, getting kind of hyped up for baseball that counts here soon.
Yeah. So with that, because you've already experienced a Rays spring training with the WBC included, how much has that been similar 23 to similar to what's been going on so far in 26, or are there similarities at all?
That's a good question. I don't remember as much hype going into the last WBC. It
Okay.
was more like that event kind of created, I think, what you're seeing now, where like it's
Mhm.
really become a thing that people are excited about. I think actually Randy Arozarena played such a big part in that when he was with the Rays for Team
Mhm.
Mexico. And I remember watching that from afar and just being like, I always thought it was a neat tournament and a cool idea and everything, but like seeing that team in particular really kind of opened some eyes to just being like, wow, like this can be really special. This can be really cool. And then, of course, the way the 23 tournament ended with Ohtani and Trout, that was like peak baseball right there. Like that was super fun and cool to see. And I think there was just a little bit more energy maybe heading into this one. And you could see that even from when guys reported to camp, talking to Griffin Jax and Garrett Clevenger about the idea of representing Team USA, especially meaningful for Jax given his military background. And then like talking to Junior, especially about representing the Dominican, it was like, okay, this is like a big deal. This is special. This is going to be really cool. And I think that's played out so far. I'm pretty excited to see the knockout round starting soon.
Yeah. What have your impressions been more on the Rays side of things? Because again, I mean, I'm sure that you've watched as many games as you can with games going on and stuff. But from a Rays perspective, what has been your impression? Has there been a buzz among other Tampa Bay media members just about what they've seen from the Rays guys?
I think Junior's created so much buzz basically on his own, right? I mean, you saw what he did just in the exhibition games when
Yeah,
they went
yeah,
down and played the Tigers in the DR, and it was like four rockets in the first game, all off his bat at more than 100 miles an hour. He did the same thing in the second game, and then he lights up the place with that home run. And what was it, the game against Nicaragua, I believe. And then I think Kevin Cash said the day after that, or one of those days where he just said like, we've got to get this guy in the postseason. Like he thrives under the bright lights. I think we all kind of knew it. Like the not actually hot take was that Junior Caminero is going to have like a Randy 2023 WBC. Like he's going to absolutely set the world on fire, which he is seems to be doing right now.
yeah.
So I think that's generated a ton of excitement. I talked to a bunch of the guys around here about like seeing somebody like Garrett Clevenger, who's not obviously as well known on the national stage, like getting to be a part of that Team USA bullpen and like how special that is for him. And, the idea that if you didn't know him before, you're going to know him after this. I think these guys get pretty excited about watching it from afar. And, in the same sense that like they're baseball fans, they get kind of juiced up saying like, wow, these games really matter. People are fired up about this. That's very exciting. And I think that's definitely been the case here. And I don't want to leave out Jonathan Aranda because like we've all seen it. We saw it last year. The Rays have seen it for a while now. Like what a professional hitter, what a good hitter, what a good player. And I loved seeing what was it after the tie-breaking homer he hit in the eighth inning of that one of their first games. The emotion he had running the bases, like you don't see that from Jonathan Aranda a
Yeah.
lot. Like you remember maybe the walk-off he hit in Tampa last year where he was kind of bloodied up from the collision in foul territory or whatever,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah,
he hit the home run. Like that was pretty fired up Jonathan Aranda, and like this was really fired up Jonathan
yeah.
Aranda. So I think that's been really cool to see, and I think the guys have kind of bought into that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Last thing on the WBC, the Rays had their exhibition game against the Netherlands. How was that experience like? Because I don't know if they had one back in 23, but like to at least see that kind of a tune-up, like did it seem like the Rays guys were maybe a little bit more amped up for it because of that, or like how did you kind of feel the vibe out of that game?
Maybe a little bit. I think it was more so just kind of respect and appreciation for that Netherlands team that came in and kind of realizing that like, oh, that lineup's pretty good actually.
Yeah,
Like the
yeah.
top of that lineup was really talented and they were clearly getting geared up to play in more meaningful games. So I think it was really cool from that perspective just to see that team getting ready to go out and play in the tournament and understanding that even this team that wasn't going to be favored or much of a big time thought going into it, like some really good hitters, some really talented people, and then like Andrew Jones, a Hall of Famer, just sitting in the dugout managing that team, which
Yeah.
is really cool to see.
Yeah. Yeah. So now going over to the spring training side of things, with these guys, and it's not that many guys from the Rays that are in the WBC, but obviously the attention has gone more towards them than what's been going on in Port Charlotte and other parts of Florida. But what have been your early impressions of spring training? Do you feel like there's a different vibe to this team than years previous? Like, just knowing that, like, is there maybe some extra juice, knowing that the guys are going back to the trop? Like, how has it been like more or less over the first month of spring camp from your perspective?
The first few weeks, I would say everything felt so new because the roster has turned over so much.
Yeah.
There's just so many new faces, so many people to get to know. But I was actually talking to somebody who's been around for quite some time in this organization, and he did say like it felt like a little bit of a different vibe. I think the word he used was eager. There was just like a certain eagerness to this team, which is
Okay.
kind of interesting to think about, like because you do have a combination of a lot of young players, of course,
Mm.
like the Rays are always going to have young players, and then the
Yeah.
free agents they brought in are guys who are kind of looking to bounce back or prove themselves, or they kind of have something to show. And
Mm.
you're getting even the younger players, that junior Aranda, kind of McClanahan class of guys who are getting into the point where they have something to prove. They want to get to the next stage of their career. And I think it's been a pretty motivated group, a pretty laid back group, pretty easygoing. Some leadership kind of emerging from the Steven Matz's. Nick Martinez has been everything that everybody said that he would be as far as like a leader and just a super approachable guy. Cedric Mullins, haven't seen him on the field as much, but it seems like a pretty easygoing guy, somebody that kind of leads by example a little bit. So I'd say it's been a pretty good vibe. It is just kind of funny because there have been so many people out for the WBC. I mean, not even that many people, like you said, but when you take Junior and Aranda out of the lineup, it kind of stands out when you're
Yeah.
looking at the rest of the group. And then Yandy's been a little nicked up lately, and you've had some other injuries going around with Simpson, Lux. Mullins, that it's kind of not been representative in any sense of the word as far as the lineups that you're seeing on a daily basis, but you have seen their pitching, which I think has looked good for the most part. The Edwin Uceta injury is a pretty tough blow for them early on, but you've seen some guys step up and look pretty good. And I think the most important thing, which is always a knock on wood situation in spring training, is that they've had a relatively healthy camp in terms of long-term concerns. Edwin
Mm.
Uceta and Steven Wilson are probably the only ones that you really need to worry about for opening day. So a good spring is a healthy spring is like kind of the thing I've come to learn in 16 years or whatever of doing this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
on that perspective, it's been a pretty good spring for the Rays.
Yeah, definitely. On Usayd, because I know that seems like it's kind of they're targeting opening day as the time frame. Like, short answer on that, is that a realistic timetable, just knowing what you know from Cash?
I don't think so at this point,
Okay.
just because it's 16 days till opening day as we're speaking right now. He's still
Yeah.
playing catch. Like you'd probably want to see him in bullpens and in live BPs and then in games
Yeah.
before
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the
Okay.
case. So my guess at this point, like I have to do a roster projection coming out later this week. I'm not going to have him in the bullpen to start the season. Seems like he's coming along fine, but you'd rather be safe than sorry with something like that rather than rushing him back.
Yeah, for sure. And then some of these other injuries, they just seem like just minor things here and there. Like we haven't really seen Gavin Lux. I would assume that we're going to see him at some point this week, today.
Today, yeah.
Today, yeah, so big thing there. And hopefully I'll get this out before that. But like those like minor things, do they seem like any sort of major concern for this team, or is it more of just like this guy's sore, this guy's got like a back issue for like a couple days, this guy tweaked something or something like that?
Yeah, it's been a lot of that, minor stuff that I think honestly, even if it was the regular season, especially like meaningful games, guys would probably play through this sort of
Yeah,
stuff. Like
yeah,
Chandler Simpson especially seems that way. He's had like a hamstring thing that he's kind of been playing through. And like you do not want to mess Chandler Simpson's legs up on March 10th
yeah, yeah,
at
100%.
the risk of the regular season. So they've been pretty careful with stuff like that. Even Yandy Diaz has been out for about a week now with like a left hand thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I think he could probably, that's something that he could probably play through if it was the regular season, but there's still 2 weeks worth of exhibition games, so they're playing it pretty careful with stuff like that, I'd say, and taking a look at a lot of young guys in the meantime.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Pitching side of things, specifically Shane, he's
Yeah,
got two outings so far, which has been great considering that the last time that we saw him pitch in spring training, things did not go well in that regard. I don't even know if he got through two outings. He might have just gotten one and then everything shelved. Am I remembering correctly?
he actually got through basically the entire spring last year. It was the last start of his tune-up outing. Basically, it was going to be like a shorter outing before his
Against the
opening
Red
day
Sox,
start.
right?
Yeah, I believe it was the plan before his opening day start. Like everything had gone super smoothly. I was actually out of camp at that point for my friend's wedding, and then I just remember seeing it on TV and seeing him walk off the mound with that injury. It was terrible. So yeah, that was like he's done this part before. As
Yeah, yeah,
crazy as it sounds, like we're always referencing, it's been so long since we've seen him on a mound, but like he did have a good, healthy spring last year until his last start. So,
got it.
but I think all of it does kind of add up together to be like this is a very big spring, and every time he pitches, we're going to write about it like it's a pretty big deal every time he's on the mound.
Yeah, so like right now, again, these are all ramp up starts to get up to whatever those big one or two starts towards the end of spring is. Does it seem like he's feeling better than last year? Like, what are the vibes like with him from what you've seen?
Really high. He's been really open about everything.
Hmm.
Obviously he had some personal tragedy with his father
Yeah,
passing in
yeah,
January. He's been really open about that and just kind of the impact that that had on him as a person, not just a pitcher or anything, but then everything that he's been through professionally as a pitcher with the Tommy John surgery, the freak injury last year where he couldn't feel his fingers for, a month or so, a month and a half after that. He couldn't feel his thumb when he went back and he made those rehab starts in Durham after that, and then he had the compression or decompression surgery, and he's started to feel a little bit more like himself. And I think he looks more like himself. Like
yeah.
the fastball is not what it was in 2023, but it's getting better every time. Like I think Snyder pointed out yesterday, it was like a half a mile an hour on average better than it was in his first start, and they want to keep kind of gradually increasing that to where he's, maybe by mid-season you're seeing the old Shane. But what stood out to me in talking to Shane a little bit last spring as well, but especially this spring, is like he doesn't just want to be a thrower. He wants to be a pitcher. He
Yeah,
wants to be
yeah.
able to use the changeup, the slider, the curveball to go out and get outs and keep something in the tank for, when he needs to step on a two-strike fastball and get it up into the upper 90s. Like it's still there. And he said that very clearly. He's like, I still got it. And you saw that like him hit 96 a couple of times
Yeah,
yesterday. It's
yeah.
still in there, but he's being a little bit more mindful of like keeping it in the tank, taking it out when he needs it, with the idea of being healthy and effective throughout a full season, whatever a full season is going to look like in terms of innings for him this year.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense in that regard. Other pitchers that are involved, because I feel like the bullpen, at least the back end of the bullpen's kind of solved. Even without Uceda, you have a couple of guys there that are going to be taking up those spots.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of that like middle bullpen, and then like the end of the rotation is the big question mark. One of the so Ian Seymour has had a really solid spring so far. Joe Boyle, it looks like his control has improved a lot. Are you expecting either of those guys to realistically compete for a rotational spot, or is that rotation filled and they're probably going to be more of a long reliever type situation?
Exactly that. Yeah, I think the rotation is pretty well set with Rasmussen, Pepio, Martinez, Matz, and McClanahan. That is pretty well set. The bullpen is such an open question right now because they have, like you said, those three spots that are probably accounted for if you said it's not ready with Jax, Clevenger, and Baker. And then like your guess is as good as mine,
Yeah.
but I would expect a couple of them will be long reliever types just because the innings questions with Matz, with McClanahan, with Rasmussen to a certain extent. So
Mm.
like there is room to carry a Joe Boyle as a long reliever.
Yeah,
There's room
yeah.
to carry an Ian Seymour as a long reliever. I don't know if you carry both of them because I think Yoendris Gomez is probably going to make the team. He's out of options. He's in the WBC right now, but he's kind of got that multi-inning, long man, depth
Mm.
starter type profile as well. But there could be room for those guys. I think Seymour would fit as another lefty too. And then I think, you can keep them in those spots. And if there is a need in the rotation, you bump them up. If they need to go back down to AAA and start and get on a day for where they can, take a rotation spot in the future, that's available to them. But I think competition is kind of key for both of those guys because they got a taste of it last year and starting and relieving a little bit, both Boyle and Seymour. And now it's kind of just about, all right, what's the next step for you? And I agree with you. I think Seymour start or relief outing the other night in Tampa was awesome. Like 10 up, 10 down, control was ridiculous. Changeup was nasty. And Boyle before that, it was still a little bit of, the Joe Boyle experience where it's out of the zone at times, when he has to come back in, he can get hit a little bit, but the stuff is just undeniable. So I think they really want to see him take off and give him a lane to kind of do that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The other two biggest question marks, because I think for more or less the catcher position is kind of finalized with Fiducia and Fortes, and maybe Keegan will come up at some point, and we'll see what happens there. On the infield side of things, so second base, shortstop, that's still that very interesting competition there. And I will say, at least from what I've seen, Carson Williams has definitely made a statement so far this spring. It seems like the K rate's down, the chase rate's down. He's hitting the ball hard, which he's
Yeah.
always done, but he's hitting the ball really hard this spring. Are you expecting what are you expecting between Lux, Williamson, Walls, and Carson? Are you expecting all four to make the opening day roster, or how is that going to kind of play out in middle infield?
I think it's going to be Walls and Lux to start the
Okay.
season. Walls at shortstop, Lux at second
Yeah,
base,
yeah.
and Williamson kind of backing up both. Williamson is like a pretty natural platoon partner for Lux. Lux hits righties really well. Williamson is right-handed. Williamson has worked at second base and looked pretty good this spring, considering he's barely played there before. Just an absolute natural in the infield. Been really impressed with him. And Walls, I think, is probably going to get the run to start the season at shortstop, but I think you're right. Like Carson's made it pretty interesting. Like if he can just, it's not like it's not complicated with him. It's one thing. Can he cut down the swing and miss? Like that's basically it. If he does
Yeah.
that, you have a really impactful shortstop who can play great defense, great arm, legit power, which they could obviously use at shortstop. And then it's just the question of can he hit enough to get to that power? So what you've seen this spring has been pretty good at times, I think. There's still been some games where it hasn't been great, but I mean, talking about like pretty high level stuff, he's had really good at bats against Garrett Crochet and Framber Valdez. Like
Yeah.
that's playing at a pretty high level when you can do that. So I think
Very
it's been
much
an
so.
interesting spring for him, and I'm curious to see what they do at the end of spring with him.
Very much so. This is kind of just a fun question. Then I want to get into the outfield before we wrap things up. Is it weird that Gavin Lux is at second base and not Brandon Lau this year?
Yeah, yeah. Like
Yeah,
all that kind of stuff. Like you walk in and like Pete Fairbanks isn't there, and like he's
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah, yeah.
talking trash to everybody, and like you walk in and like Belau is just not there. I think Shane said it. Was it Shane? Shane said it maybe early this spring. He was talking to Yandy. He's like, it's weird not having the little guy around. It's like, yeah, it is kind of weird. Like,
Yeah.
especially for me, like Belau has been on the team and a big part of it since I came onto the beat in 21.
Yeah.
Like that was his 39 homer season. Like he's been
Mhm.
such a key part of the clubhouse mix. And it's like even for like me and Topkin, like when we're talking about, oh, we need, perspective, we need quotes from guys who've been around for a little while, and you're kind of looking around the room like, well, who's been around for a while? It's harder to come by. So definitely weird just like walking in and not seeing those guys who are, even as much as the Rays turn the roster, like those are guys like you're just used to seeing when you show up to work every day.
Yeah, I know for me, I mean, you can see the flag behind
Yeah,
yeah, it's
I
a
get
weird
it.
vibe. It's a weird vibe. So outfield wise, that still seems kind of open, but also not kind of open. It's one of those. It's the same thing as the middle infield, where it's like there's like you might see some change, but it seems like things are all also kind of playing out. What are you more or less expecting that situation to look like? Because I know that some guys have shown some things, but it's not like the guys that are kind of like toying with potential options or whatever it was to make the roster as like a backup guy. It's not like any of them are having like crazy springs.
Right.
So like how are you looking at what the outfield can figure? Because I would assume it would be like five. They would go in with like five outfitters or something like that going into the year.
Ideally, yeah. I think you're probably looking at Chandler in left most days, Mullins in center most days, especially against right-handers, and Fraley in right
Okay.
against right-handers, which opens up. You probably want to have two more, or at least two guys who can play the outfield.
Yeah.
Johnny DeLucas seems like, again, just kind of a natural fit there in that, like, he can play center field at a high level. If they needed somebody to give Mullins a day off, he can play right field. He definitely has the arm for that, and he's right-handed, so he's such a perfect like platoon partner for those guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, and he's had a pretty good spring. Like the only question with him was his health, basically. Like, and he's been healthy this spring because I mean he was the center fielder last year to start the season. Like they were
It
ready
was.
to give him that opportunity. So I think they still like him and a lot of the things that he does. It's just a matter of keeping him healthy and putting him in spots where he can succeed. And then the last spot, I think, is probably still a question. I think they were legitimate about wanting to give Melton the chance to make the team. He's come in. He hasn't had a great spring, I would say. He's shown a lot of his athleticism. Like he's looked great in center field. The ball flies off his bat when he makes contact. But you've seen some strikeouts. You've seen some sign that maybe he still needs a little bit more time in AAA or just game reps to kind of get on a regular rhythm and get going. Because I think he's a guy that you'll probably want to play a lot when he is up in the big leagues. So in the meantime, maybe you fill that last spot with like a Ryan Valade. He's out of options. He's right-handed. He can bounce into the infield if needed. The Rays love their versatility. So like I think that would make a lot of sense for just the way the current roster is constructed. But that's leaving out Richie Palacios, who's currently sidelined with a little bit of a back thing. Justin Henry Malloy, who I know they like as far as just his ability to hit left-handed pitching as an outfielder, former Tiger. We just saw him catch up with his old teammates yesterday. So there's still some competition going there, I would say, but that's kind of the way I'd say I see it shaping out right now.
That makes sense. And then the last thing I have, because I was a big fan of DeLuca last year, and I know he didn't show it in it was limited playing time. I do wonder how much different that team is last year with him being healthy, but going into this season, like, do you think like how much of an X factor do you think he is if he is healthy? Because again, like I know he didn't hit any home runs last season, but in limited playing time, he posted like a 130 OPS plus. So like
Yeah.
clearly the production's there, the power's there, or I guess enough of powers there. But like is he enough of a legitimate X factor to kind of make, some sort of a difference this season if he's healthy?
I think so, because I think the defense in center field matters so much too. Like
Yeah.
this team had to be good, like the Rays have to be good defensively. And to be good defensively, you have to be strong up the middle. And that's Walls at shortstop, Lux at second, Williamson at both of those, Mullins, and then whoever else is going to play with Mullins in center field. And I think DeLuca can definitely be that guy. Whereas you're right, last year, like I think it is a different season to a certain extent if he's healthy, because then you're not bouncing Chandler over there where he just frankly wasn't ready to handle center field on a daily basis yet. Mangum's not having to play as much. Maybe he's better in that fourth outfield type role. So yeah, I think he's definitely a guy who matters on this roster. And even if it's just to come in and face left-handed pitching, which is such a challenge for them last year as well, if he can just be a good at that in that part of the lineup, because that is something to watch. I think as the season gets going, and I just wrote about it a little bit in today's Rays Beat newsletter. Is like the left-handed lineup against right-handed pitching actually pretty solid. Like it's not gonna wow you with the names once you get
Yeah.
past the first three, but like those guys have track records of hitting right-handed pitching, the Luxes, even Fiducia in the minors. You go to the lineup against left-handed pitching and it can get pretty thin pretty quick. So having somebody like DeLuca or Ben Williamson step into a bigger role, I think would be really important for this team this season.
Perfect. Last thing I have before you wrap things up. Has your like whatever predictions that you had coming into the season, have they changed at all from what you've seen in spring training, or is it still like in my perspective, it's gonna be tough to see them compete above like third place just because of how deep the AL East is. Maybe in another
Yeah.
division it'd be different, but like from your perspective, has it changed at all from the start of spring to now?
It's funny. I usually try not to let it because like these games, they're so meaningless to a certain
Yeah, yeah.
extent. Like nothing that you see should actually change it. But then every spring I'm come out a little more optimistic probably than I was before. Health is a big part of that. And I think, like I said, they have had a pretty healthy spring. And just seeing those five starters lined up, you're kind of like, you know what? This could work. Like those guys should give you a chance to win every
Yeah.
night. And then, if anything, my optimism is increased only because Junior and Aranda. Like just seeing those guys in camp and then seeing them at the WBC just reminds you that like this team probably has two of the 30 best hitters in baseball.
Yeah,
I
they
would argue
love playing on
maybe
the big stage too. It's not like they're shy. I
right.
mean, Junior's like throwing his bat around. He's doing whatever the hell he's doing. Like,
Yeah,
and everyone and like he wants it. Like they want that spotlight, that attention to show what they can do.
exactly. Exactly. And I mean, I think you could stretch that out to say Yanni. Like they have probably three of the 40 best hitters in baseball. And
Yeah,
like, is that and good pitching and defense enough to get this team, out of that kind of 500 range, which is where I think most people probably had them coming into the spring? Like, I don't know, but like, I think you feel pretty good about any lineup that starts with those guys, especially showing what they're showing and that rotation that is healthy enough to kind of, give the team a chance to win every night. So I don't know. I try not to let spring training affect me that much, but like, health matters, and then seeing your best players look like your best players really matters.
yeah, perfect. All right, well, Adam, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it as always. I want to make sure at the end of every interview that everyone has the opportunity to plug what they have going on. So, where can people find you at wherever you're, whether that be MLB.com, anywhere that you're posted on social media, anything like that?
Yeah. MLB.com, RaysBaseball.com, and the Rays Beat newsletter, which I believe you can subscribe to via MLB.com as well. So thank you very much for having me on. This has been a great conversation. Always love
Yeah,
it.
yeah, perfect, perfect. Thanks so much, Adam. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.